So hey guys, it's Kenzie whatever. I'm Kiersten and welcome back to another true crime video. So today we are going to be talking about Kenzie Houk and her unborn son Christopher Houk Brown. So let's just jump right into this video. Kenzie Marie Houk was born on April 20th of 1982. She was 26 years old. She was from New Beaver, Pennsylvania. Her parents were Jack and Deborah. She did have a sister named Jennifer and a half-sister named Jackie. She was described as warm-hearted. She loved being a homemaker, loved to cook and clean, and she also loved to take care of her children. So now let's just jump right into the incident. So Chris and Kenzie ended up meeting when they were children as they lived in the same small town. But they never got together until they were adults when they ended up reconnecting. But at this point, they already had children from previous relationships. So Kenzie had two daughters, a 7-year-old named Janessa and a 4-year-old named Adeline. And Chris had an 11-year-old son named Jordan. So they wanted to blend their families together, so they were living in the same house only for a short amount of time. We're going to be welcoming their first child together, the boy that they were going to name Christopher. Earlier that morning, Kenzie ended up asking Chris if he would be able to stay home as she wasn't feeling very good, and she was also 8.5 months pregnant at this point. But Chris decided that he was going to go to work anyways. So shortly after 8 o'clock, Jordan and Janessa left to go to school on the bus. And at around 9 o'clock on February 20th of 2009, after Chris went to work and the kids went to school, tree trimmers showed up to their house as they were working on a job. But they had saw that 4-year-old Adeline was standing in the front doorway kind of sobbing that her mother was dead. They didn't kind of understand it, and when they finally figured out what had happened, they ended up calling 911, and Kenzie was found in her bedroom shot in the back of the head. Paramedics were unable to revive her, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. So now let's just talk about the investigation. So they found Kenzie and they called Chris, and got all the children and everything. And they ended up testing Chris for gunpowder residue, but his test came back all clean, as he also had an airtight alibi saying that he was at work, and he had proof that he was at work. So they kind of ruled Chris out as a suspect. So they also interviewed a couple of the children, the two older children. They weren't allowed to interview the youngest. And Jordan had claimed that he had saw a black pickup truck near the garage. But other than that, they didn't get anything from that. So they ended up releasing them to be able to go home. At this point, they were not arrested. This was just the preliminary hearing or interview kind of thing. At around 3 o'clock in the morning, Chris and his children were woken up to the police banging on the door. And at this point, they were there to arrest Jordan. So all the evidence they had was very circumstantial. Janessa did, in her interview, she mentioned that she saw Jordan moving his guns around and quickly covering something in a blue blanket. She said that she also heard a loud boom and that it could have been a gunshot. She saw Jordan drop something on the ground while they were going to the bus, and some of these things lined up with what the police found. The police did find the blanket at the scene with quarter-size hole in it. That could definitely be a bullet hole. They also found a 20-gauge shotgun shell casing right beside the family's driveway, as Jordan could have dropped it on his way to the bus. But also, they never tested Jordan for gunpowder residue or anything. The police had claimed that during their interview, he had changed his story a couple of times, so they didn't know, if it was true or not. So Jordan did claim that a truck was near the garage, but there was no one inside. Then he would change his story, saying that there was someone in there, but they were moving around and they also wore a hat. So police believe that he also killed Kenzie due to the fact that they were having a baby and that all the attention wouldn't be on him, it would be on the baby. Well, here's what the trial is. So it's quite messy. So they ended up charging Jordan with first-degree murder as an adult. This kid was 11 years old. He was not an adult, but they charged him as an adult. And if he was convicted as an adult, that he would spend life in prison without the ability of parole. So the decision to charge an 11-year-old as an adult is actually required under Pennsylvania state law to charge a potential murderer as an adult regardless of how old they are. Many civil rights organizations opposed this decision. They even had over 4,000 signatures petitioning for Jordan to be tried as a juvenile and not tried as an adult. And unfortunately, that decision of charging him as an adult didn't end up working. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court ended up finding that the judge that was trying to charge him as an adult violated his Fifth Amendment right. Now they changed it to charging him as a juvenile. His trial ended up taking over 3 years to complete, and during that time, Chris had drove over 200 miles every single day to go visit his son, who at this point was still denying any involvement in her murder. So his trial ended up lasting only 3 days, and he was found delinquent, which means he was found guilty. At this point, he was 14 years old. As a juvenile being found guilty, he was supposed to stay in the juvenile detention center until he was 21, but he was released early when he was 19 years old to his uncle's custody, but he would still have to be on probation for the remaining time. So his lawyers continued to send appeals even though he was out to try to get his case overturned. And in July of 2018, Pennsylvania Supreme Court appealed his case due to the evidence that was used to convict him as insignificant. So all the evidence that they had used in the trial was insignificant, and so they appealed his case. So there was only one other suspect named for Kenzie's murder, and that was Kenzie's ex-boyfriend, Adam Harvey. Drove a black pickup truck just like Jordan had claimed to see. He recently found out that Adeline wasn't his and that he was still paying child support for a child that wasn't his, and he was angry about that. He got pulled over the same exact day that she was murdered, but police had noticed that there was snow on the top of his truck, and to drive 24 miles away, the snow would have melted at this point or fallen off, and it wasn't disturbed. When they interviewed him, he was genuinely upset that Kenzie was murdered. His hands, they tested him for gunpowder residue, and they tested negative. And he had his father back up his alibi, saying that he was at home all day long. Okay, now let's talk about the aftermath. Jordan is now free, and he has no record of convictions. He cannot be retried at this point. Jordan did go on to 2020 interview saying that he was actually excited to have a baby brother, as he always wanted a baby brother. So he was happy and excited about it, so there was no reason that he was jealous. He says that he is glad that the big weight has been lifted off of his shoulders after 9.5 years of this whole thing. And in 2020, Chris and Jordan ended up filing a lawsuit against the retired state police investigators and officials seeking for personal damages. Jordan is currently at college, studying computer science. He has repeatedly stated in interviews that he is now suffering from PTSD and that he's committed to turning his life around. So Kenzie's family is seeking justice for Kenzie and Christopher, and they have a petition to reopen and reinvestigate the case. I don't think that the case has been completely solved. Maybe it has because of the whole convicting Jordan, but I'm not sure. But they do have a petition for that, and Kenzie's family also find it very suspicious that both Christopher and Jordan have not attempted to help find justice for Kenzie and Christopher. So they find that very, very weird. So I'm gonna go ahead and just leave you with some photos of Kenzie. I'll see you guys in the outro. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment down below what I should do next. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the bell notifications so you're notified when we post every single Tuesday and Friday. This is KMCers, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.